Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Yael. Really a pleasure to be here today. And I guess I will need to find the, appropriate voice to share today about my career journey because I was kind of expecting to see very young faces, but I see many moms' faces also. So if there is anything that you would like me to clarify a bit more or elaborate a little bit more about, I guess we can do that during the Q&A. It's actually good if you could turn on your videos because I like to see people's expressions as I'm sharing, so that helps to give me information to adjust my speed or adjust my content. But in any case, I guess I will start the sharing. Um, so I'm Carrie Tan, and I'm very happy to meet you all today. I thought I would share my sharing today from the age where I was in my 20s, right? So actually, after graduating from school, I had a period of my life where I was in a corporate sector, and I started my career in an advertising job. After a few years, I went into a sales job, but that sales job was quite unique because I wasn't selling products. I was actually selling services in terms of helping people to find their dream job as a headhunter and also helping companies to find good people that they can hire for their companies. And thereabouts during my life, in my 20s, I had the opportunity, or rather, I sought out the opportunity to do some volunteering work overseas. And I found myself in Kadaka, which is where you see this picture of me holding the hand of a little girl. And it was a volunteering experience that I would say kind of pretty much changed my life because of the things that I saw there, the situations that I saw many women, young girls in. It hurt my heart deeply because I saw a situation where women did not have opportunities, and in fact, they were treated very badly um, by others in their society, and it made them feel very unsafe. And that prompted me to look at what I wanted to really do with my life. And it was in my 20s that this deep reflection came about, and I guess prompted me to want to spend my time and energy and my career doing something that could help to solve this problem of gender inequality and specifically discrimination against girls and women. So it was because of this volunteering stint that led me to start Daughters of Tomorrow. And that journey itself, I could do a 3-hour talk about it. But suffice to say that it wasn't very easy and it created a lot of learning opportunities for me. But what I set out to do was I wanted to create something that could help mothers to feel confident about themselves, to have the ability to provide for themselves financially, so that they will not feel that it's too difficult to bring up their children. And this was something that was happening in India. It's a bit difficult, I think, for you at a young age to understand. But let's just say that back in those days in India, and I think in some parts of India now still, in the more rural parts, um, there could be moms who are pregnant with babies, and they find that it's so difficult for them to have a life for themselves that they might decide that they don't want to have the baby. So that was something that prompted me to start Daughters of Tomorrow. And in the beginning of Daughters of Tomorrow, what I did was I brought volunteers to India as well, and we taught the mom how to sew and how to make products. And then we brought those products back to Singapore to sell. And that was in the form of a social enterprise. And I was hoping that if many people bought these products, then we could hire many more women in the Indian villages to have this job that could make a living for themselves and help them to bring up their daughters confidently. So that little picture that you see where, you see the stuffed toys, you see this logo of Dot with a little girl in the background, that was the first version of Daughters of Tomorrow that I started. And then, so that volunteering work and trying to find my way to create a social enterprise that worked, that process took about 2 to 3 years. And at the same time, because I was sharing about this issue of discrimination against girls and women to people in Singapore, I also got to know many others who were actually working in Singapore, and they opened my eyes to the fact that there are also mummies and mothers in Singapore who struggle to have a stable job and to provide enough for their kids and for themselves. So that's why that prompted me to relook at my focus. And I figured, hey, I'm trying to do this work in India, but there are also moms and families in Singapore who actually do need some kind of support as well. So in my 30s, I think this is in 2014, about 10 years ago, I decided to change my focus and I created Daughters of Tomorrow in Singapore. And instead of making handicrafts, what we realized was a better way to help these women make a good living was to actually match them with companies in Singapore who wanted to hire people to work, but somehow were not able to find suitable people. And this is Madam Dewey on the screen on the left side with her three daughters. Madam Dewey is one of the first women in Singapore that I worked with. And that little trophy, not a trophy, it was a little trophy, but it had a car on it because we wanted to acknowledge Madam Dewey for her efforts in stepping out from being a homemaker and a housewife to try something new, to contribute to her own financial independence. And we wanted to give her acknowledgement, and her dream was to own a car. So we created this little a trophy with a car for her, and she has these three beautiful daughters. And she was one of the first women that Daughters of Tomorrow helped when we first started in 2014. And slowly over the years, we began to grow the organization into a charity organization. And the other picture you see is the other women who started to become a part of the community, who managed to find jobs. And there is a lady in a headscarf over there. Her name is Rahayu, Madam Rahayu. Madam Rahayu is a politician and a member of parliament. And this is one of the activities that we organize for her community, the residents who live in her area. And she also invited us to bring our programs to her neighborhood so that we could help the mothers in her neighborhood build their confidence and find jobs. So this was a community event where we were celebrating a kampong spirit. And I think at that time we had a special project where we wanted to create a child minding network. I think it could be a bit similar to what you're experiencing in your homeschooling environment, where different moms and dads come together and teach you, right? So in the Daughters of Tomorrow Child Minding Network, we were getting moms together so that they could help to look after the children of other moms while those other moms went to work. So you might find that this seems like a little similar in terms of what we're trying to do. Okay, so a large part of my 30s, meaning when I was about 30 years old to 30, 38, plus I was involved in this community work and running this charity. And I guess because of the work I was doing in the community, the families that I was working with, and also the politicians who saw that, who noticed that, hey, there's this young woman who seems to care a lot about the community. What happened was one day I got an invitation to have tea with someone from the government. And I was quite surprised, like, oh, why does people from the government want to have tea with me? Did I get into any trouble? But it was far from that. I think it was a conversation they wanted to have to find out whether I might be suitable to potentially go into politics, and to find out whether I had any interest to go into politics. So that process actually took about 2 years or so. And so what happened in that 2 years or so was there were many conversations where I got to know more about what our politicians from the People's Action Party was doing for Singapore. And I was also considering, like, oh, do I want to, change my career from working in the community to getting involved in politics? And I guess what made me decide that I would take up this new challenge is knowing that and also having experience that sometimes we may want to change some things and help some people in the community, but there are also certain things that if we can change from a policy, meaning how the government decides to do certain things for society, then we could actually help a lot more people at the same time. So that was the reason why I decided that, hey, since there's an opportunity for me to be able to influence how the government designs policies to help Singaporeans, I decided that I will take up this opportunity to potentially become a member of parliament. And it's during the 2020 general elections that I first came onto the scene, and for Singaporeans to know about me and the work that I'm doing and the work that I'm keen to do on behalf of Singaporeans. And that's when I started to represent more than just the underprivileged or low-income women in Singapore. I began to represent my constituents who are the residents of Nee Soon South, and they are men, they are women, they are boys and girls, and they come from all ages, and they come from all different walks of life, whether they are rich, they are poor, they are in between, and all different races. And so I decided, or rather I found myself in a situation where I now have to listen to many different people with many different perspectives, to ensure that how they're thinking, the problems that they are facing is being reflected to the government to consider when we make certain rules for Singapore or create certain programs in Singapore, how we want to spend the country's money to solve what kinds of problems in Singapore. And it's important that in this process of solving problems for Singaporeans, that Singaporeans are consulted. No? So this is the role of my current job as a member of parliament. Okay. So this is some pictures describing the day, a typical day or a typical week in my life as a member of parliament from PAP. So my constituency is in Nee Soon South, which is in Yishun, in the north part of Singapore. And from the pictures, you will see that I do a lot of different things in a single day. Sometimes, or actually oftentimes, you will see in that top left-hand bubble there, I'm having a lot of meetings and conversations with different kinds of people about what is affecting them in their lives as they stay in this community. So this is one particular meeting where you will see there is a religious leader from the Malay community. There are residents, and there are also people who work for the government in the same meeting, and we're trying to solve a problem that residents are facing in their neighborhoods about the lack of parking. Okay, so there's one particular kind of problem that we encounter, or I encounter in my typical day. The middle picture you will see is me walking around at the coffee shops and chatting with residents. And I do this every week on the weekends. And this is a way for me to maintain a regular channel of communication with my residents. And often, sometimes they will find that, oh, they may have a problem in their homes, like maybe their ceiling is leaking because the building is old, and they will come let me know. And I will need to manage the resources from the town council that takes care of the areas in which we live in. If you are living in a HDB flat, outside your HDB flat, you'll see there are coffee shops, there are parks, there are gardens, there are exercise facilities. All these things are managed by the town council. And one of my roles as a member of parliament is also to ensure that the town council is running well and helping residents to solve the things that they encounter in their lives in terms of their living environment. Okay, and then you'll see me talking to this lady on a wheelchair because in Yishun we have a significant number of people who are more senior in their age. They're old people and elderly, and they have different kinds of problems with their health, with their mobility. So I create programs, and I also have committees of volunteers who spend their time to help to look after the elderly people in the community. Okay, so you'll see from this slide that actually my job is a lot about talking to people, listening to people, and then translating what is important to the residents into suggestions and considerations so that we can understand what is it that Singaporeans of different backgrounds, ages, and maybe different economic situations need in order to live their lives well, right? And of course, as part of that work, because there's a lot of things to do, right? My key focus areas are on mental health, on ensuring people feel well inside in their hearts, um, about helping the poor people to have the necessary support so that they can improve their lives and lead better quality lives. And I also care about the environment. So that little picture, you can see there's a lot of green, right? So we have a lot of community gardens in the neighborhoods where residents come and they volunteer. And in volunteering and doing gardening, they get good health, physical health, mental health, and they also grow some very good harvest and food that they can share with their neighbors. So this is kind of in a gist what I do on a day-to-day basis, but it's really a lot more. So maybe if you ask questions later, I can share in more detail. So all these interactions with my residents on the ground also help me to be more well-rounded in my own perspective about what is it that I would like to champion for Singaporeans so that the government will consider these issues seriously. So for example, there are issues that moms face, right? About, sometimes when the childcare is closed and then, but they still need to be at work. What do we do? So we come up with policies. For example, this year, the government announced that by 1st of December, every company has to reasonably consider their employees' requests to have flexible work arrangements. Meaning, if an employee has certain things that they need to tend to at home, maybe you're not feeling well, or your grandma or your grandpa is not feeling well, and your mom or your dad needs to be at home to take care of you or to take care of your grandparents, then they need to take some time off from work, right? How can we create a society where the companies are okay with employees asking for time off or coming to work a little bit later so that they can take better care of their family members? So this is something that we have successfully asked the government for, and government has made it mandatory, meaning compulsory, that if a worker makes a request, the boss must consider it and be able to have that discussion with the employee to make things easier for them so that they can both be at home and be at work at the suitable times so that the company can grow and do its work properly, and mommy and daddy can also do their work properly at home, being mom, dad, and also they are daughters and sons to their parents. Okay, so this is one example of a policy improvement that has come about because myself and my colleagues who are other members of parliament have talked about this extensively in parliament. Okay, so other than that, I also kind of advise some other organizations in society that help with different kinds of work. So Daughters of Tomorrow was an organization I started for women, and after becoming a politician, I had to pass the organization on for somebody else to run, and they are doing so very well, and they're continuing the work. And then, while being an MP, I also find that, hey, actually, boys and men also need sometimes some support and some understanding. So I got some volunteers together, and we started this organization called Rise Community to help uncles. Why I call them uncles? Because their age is typically a bit older, maybe in their 50s and 60s, who are no longer able to work because of their health. So you see this uncle here, Mr. Goh, he actually suffered a stroke a few years ago, and because he suffered a stroke, he's not able to move very well. Like when I met him, his arm was like stuck here, and he couldn't really move it very much. So I decided that, hey, we need to see how we can help some of these men to get back into a situation where they can hold down a job and provide for themselves. Because you can imagine, right, if you're all grown up and you can't have a job and you can't provide for yourself, is a pretty difficult situation to be in. So Mr. Goh is one of the men who comes regularly for a program called Tension Release Exercise, where it's also run by volunteers. And through this exercise, he manages to recover quite well. And we put him in touch with a company that was willing to offer him part-time work. And after working with them for several months, I think he has been offered a full-time position with this company. So we're very happy about that. Right. And this might be something interesting for you. At some point, while being a politician, I realized that sometimes children also, may not be able to express their feelings to people around them. So because I'm representing the people's voices and how they feel, I thought that I would like to share about how children feel to other people, including parents or just adults, right? So I created this Facebook Live program, I think about 2 years ago, where for, I think, 16 weeks or so, at 8 p.m., I would tell a story with some little puppets. Well, the story is meant for you guys, not meant for children. But because I know when children are watching something, sometimes parents are also watching. So when I do this program, I also have some messages for your parents to take note so that parents can also benefit from knowing some of these feelings that children might have, so that they can better communicate and better understand their children. Okay, and it's also for children to better understand their parents. So if you're interested, later on at the end of my slides, there's a QR code. You can scan it or ask your dad and mom to scan it, and the episodes are still available on my Facebook page, and you can catch this program that is called Catching Up with the Kiddos. And let me know whether you enjoy it, okay? So this is this has been a summary of my career from my 20s to my 30s. And actually right now, this year, I am 42 years old already. And other than my head and job as a member of parliament, I also am a healing coach in the rest of my time where I am not busy with the issues and the matters in issue. So what do I do as a healing coach? Now that's interesting. So as a healing coach, what I do is I work with people to help them understand what they're feeling inside their hearts that they may not have the chance to talk about and to recognize. And in talking through those things that they're feeling, they feel much better, right? And after they feel much better, they also learn how understanding their emotions and behaviors is actually affecting how they are being in their work or in their families and in their relationships. So when I get a chance to work with people very deeply on what is affecting them in terms of how they're feeling inside, we begin to learn a lot about human beings. And when we start to learn a lot about human beings, we understand why people behave the way they do. Then there is very valuable knowledge that can be shared with people who have to work with people. Actually, all of us have to work with people, right? Whether you, whichever industry you are in, you have to work with people, right? Unless you're a vet. But even if you're a vet, you have to work with the animal's owner, which is a human being. So as a healing coach, I help people to become better at interacting with other people, and so they can have more fulfilling relationships and more success in the areas that they want to grow their life in. So as part of this, I sometimes give talks at companies or at universities. Whoever is interested to learn about the knowledge that I have, I go there and I share with them. And I hope that by sharing my knowledge, people can learn more about themselves as human beings. Okay, so this is what I have to share. If you are interested to know more about the work that I do, you can follow me on LinkedIn. These are for the parents who have an LinkedIn account. Or you could check out the Catching Up with Kiddos episodes on Facebook. I'm not sure whether I fully utilized the half an hour. But yeah, I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. Oh, hi, Brian. Well, I think that's a very, very good question to ask. Do I agree with increasing GST? Well, that's a policy question. I'm glad that you're already paying attention to this at your age. Now, I know GST is not a pleasant thing for people because it makes the things that you buy and the services you consume a little bit more expensive, right? But we need to understand why we need to do this as a government. And we cannot look at our GST in Singapore as just the tax that is being that you have to pay. Because actually when we pay GST, the government collects the money and then the government actually takes some of that money to pay for the things that we need as a society and that is increasing in cost, like healthcare, because there are more old people and we need to look after them well, and various kinds of things, right? And when we do GST, the unique way Singapore does GST is, while we tax everyone at the same rate based on the things that you buy, 7%, right? 8%, and so on. We actually make transfers out of this money to low-income families. So actually, if you look into the whole package, the lower income families are actually not paying more to the government. They are actually getting more support from the government. And GST is an instrument, it's a policy instrument where we try to make Singapore a more equitable society so that while we tax everyone, we use some of that resources and money to give to the poorer people so that they can better cope with life. Okay, so do I agree with increasing GST? Yes, I do. I think this is one of the more unique ways we design a goods and services tax in Singapore that actually helps the people who are in more financial difficulty while still solving some of the budget issues that we have in Singapore or challenges that we have in terms of the cost of paying for the things that need to happen in society. Okay, I hope you are satisfied with the answer, or maybe it prompts you to ask more questions, which is great. You can go look into the debates in Parliament. There's a thing called Hansard. If you go into the Parliament website and you go to the Hansard, you could just use a search term GST, and all the debates and all the perspectives from the different members of parliaments would be there, and it can help you to think about these matters more deeply and come to your own conclusion. Okay, right. How can young people join politics? How can a young person become a politician in Singapore? Are these two the same thing? Okay, interesting. Okay, to be involved in politics, you don't necessarily have to become a politician because as politicians, we belong to political parties. And these are organizations that have membership. So if you join as a member to the People's Action Party, for example, then you'll be involved in a lot of activities that constitute politics, which means you get to be amongst a community of people who are discussing these policies for Singapore, are discussing the various issues that Singaporeans face, and you will get to be you get to work in the community as well. So, for example, there are many volunteers who work together with me in my constituency. And every week in the evenings, for example, we have a Meet the People session. And residents who are facing difficulties come to us, and we find ways to help them solve some of the problems or help them to have an easier time by writing appeals to the government. So, you could actually get involved in politics by just starting with volunteering as a letter writer, or you could go to the PAP branch in your neighborhood and ask them, hey, I want to get involved. How can I help? So politics is not just about speaking in parliament. Politics is about understanding people and their lives, and reflecting that, thinking deeply about that, and helping with certain kinds of ideas or suggestions that can help to solve these problems, right? So politics is not just about talking in parliament. We actually have to run programs. And there are many kinds of social and community programs that we run in the neighborhoods that actually help to improve people's lives. Okay? How can a young person become a politician in Singapore? Oh, well, you need to get involved in politics first or understand what getting involved mean. And usually, if you start volunteering at any of the political parties, and for People's Action Party, one of the ways is to volunteer as a letter writer. in our weekly Meet the People session, because that will then give you an opportunity to understand what do politicians do, right? And we do a lot more than just write letters. Sometimes you will get involved in activities that we have around the neighborhood so that you can understand what is it like and pick up the skills of how to listen well to people and translate that into suggestions and constructive ideas for the country. Okay, I hope that addresses that question. Okay. What are unrealistic and/or unreasonable expectations that people have of politicians? Okay, how can we support the mental health? Oh, thank you. I love that. These are caring questions. Is politics a safe working environment for female politicians? Oh, okay, this is very interesting. Well, what are some unrealistic or unreasonable expectations people have of politicians? What I have experienced, for example, is that sometimes there are some people who expect politicians to spend all their time and all their energy, or a very, very large part, on just solving their personal issues, right? So, for example, actually, we spend a lot of time in the community, but sometimes we may not be able to show up at a certain event because we may have certain things happening in our own families that we need to tend to. But sometimes I've heard feedback, but it's not, this is not something, I think it's particular to different communities, but I have heard, for example, people criticize me for not being at an event, or not showing up at an event, and not understanding that I also have family I need to take care of. So balancing, our own family lives and the time needed to be there and to have our presence seen by our residents is sometimes a balancing act, right? Sometimes people expect us to solve their very personal problems. For example, I have this resident who was having some struggles in his family, and he basically, because his parents were constantly quarreling and fighting, he wanted me to convince his father to have a divorce with his mother. And I'm like, oh no, this is not something that I should intervene in because it's a personal and family affair, right? So what I could do is I can say, oh, if your mom and your dad are very stressed out and they're fighting a lot, what I can do is maybe if they're open, refer them to a social worker. But I cannot tell your dad, So there are some things that politicians can help with and some that we cannot. But often, sometimes people make us come and meet us and they expect us to solve all their problems, which can be quite pressurizing. So we just need to be very empathetic and very polite and help them to see what are the things that are realistic for us to help them with and what are some things that they may need to go to get other resources to help them with. Okay, how can we support the mental health of our politicians better? Okay. I think politicians, we are very visible and we also have a presence on social media. And often, sometimes we may express our views or talk about something, and there would be people who disagree with us or feel very strongly about certain issues. And sometimes they will troll us online, meaning they will say some not very nice things about us. And if we read too much of those comments, yes, it can hurt. And it can make us feel demoralized and it can make us feel discouraged. So how I cope with it is I try not to look at those comments too much. Okay, unless they actually have constructive suggestions. So how can we support the mental health of our politicians better is to maybe recognize that we are also human, just like you. We also have kids, we have parents, and we have our other responsibilities, even though we spend a large part of our attention, our time and energy taking care of residents and taking care of the issues that Singapore faces. We also sometimes would like some understanding that we would like to have a bit of time for our own families as well. And we are not perfect. We are learning as we are working. And sometimes if we have very different life experiences from you, we may take a while to digest your perspectives. And I think that is just a very common thing, right? If something is new to us, we need some time to understand that. So I think it's just the same kind of understanding that you extend to any other human being. You can also extend it to us. So if I think it stems from people sometimes perceiving politicians to uh, I don't know, maybe sometimes we imagine these expectations also, like we have to be very serious. So I come across some of my more senior colleagues who maybe they are very serious, but I also see that they can have a playful side, but they don't feel like they can let their playful side show because people might judge them for not being serious enough as a politician. But yeah, so I'm not too worried about that because I think it's possible to be both serious and have times to be lighthearted and fun. But I think older politicians may not feel the same way. They may feel like they need to carry themselves in a very dignified manner. Otherwise, people will criticize them. So, and it's very real. We do get criticized for very strange things. Okay, is politics a safe working environment for female politicians? In Singapore, I would say yes, it's relatively safe, like physically safe, because actually in Singapore we are a very safe society. Um, but if you talk about whether we are safe online, well, we actually, the government and PAP, women politicians actually have started looking into online harms. And I would say that, well, being a female politician, sometimes people criticize us for things that are not very related to our work, like how we look, right? Is it unsafe? Well, I guess if it affects you, then it's not so safe, right? Like, yeah, but I think for most of my colleagues, we've gotten to a stage where we learned to not really care about those kind of comments. Yeah. But other than that, I think yeah, it's quite safe for female. I don't feel unsafe being a politician. Okay. Fostering community. My job is talking to people, listening, and adapting. What happens when their ideas and wants clash? Do you try to bring the groups together to converse? Oh, yes, 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 yes. It's very, very common that people living in the same area may have very different views about what should be done. So can you imagine resident A says, because of this, I think this should be done. Resident B says, no, 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 something else should be done. And then I'm in the middle, I'm like supposed to find a solution. What do I do, right? So usually what I would do is I would facilitate discussions and have both parties or both groups of people listen to each other. And through listening to each other, they then start to understand that maybe the way they are seeing a situation before is quite limited. And when they have more information and they can see also what the other person is seeing, then everybody has a bigger picture and they are able to think about it slightly differently and perhaps come to an agreement that may not be the same as what they originally wanted. So actually, yes, I spend quite a bit of my time actually fostering these kinds of dialogues and discussions because most of the time I've discovered when people are very strongly believe in something must be done, they often have that conclusion based on the kind of information that they have, which is not complete, right? But when they have access to other kinds of information and other kinds of perspective, then sometimes it better informs them and they might um, grow in their perspective of this particular situation and the solutions that they desire may also be different. Okay, so yes, facilitating conversations and discussions for people to come to a better understanding of the issues and work together to find solutions that work for as many people as possible is a very, very key part of my work. Question on legacy. What do I hope to leave behind when I finish my political career? That's a really good question. I hope to leave behind a kinder society. I hope to leave behind policies that help Singaporeans to feel less stress and to feel like, to be able to have a healthier life, not just healthier in terms of the time that they get to spend exercising, but also healthier for their minds and their hearts because they are able to have the kind of support and understanding that they need to build good relationships within their families, with themselves, and also yet be able to earn a decent and good living so that their material needs are taken care of, right? And I also hope that after I finish my political career, we can have a country and a society where people don't feel like they need to be in the rat race. Okay, meaning I hope to create or help to shape a Singapore that is less pressurizing than what it is now. Okay, that's a very big term, but there are so many ways to do that, right? And yeah, what do I hope to see for youths in Singapore in the next 50 years? Same thing, same thing, right? And actually, I have also recently, or in the last year or so, gotten to know more about the climate crisis, about climate change, and how we are actually having a very, very urgent problem globally. And I would like Singapore to still be able to be very healthy and be able to thrive as a society, even with the energy crisis that's affecting the world. So I hope that in 50 years, the youths in Singapore learn that it is possible to live very good lives without having to have so many material possessions, but be able to have very strong relationships with the people around them, with the communities around them, and be able to lead very happy and thriving lives that are not dependent on how much financial wealth they have, but how much social wealth they have with the people around them, and their inner wealth, their sense of security and mental wellness. Okay, all right. Somebody is asking, Sulin is asking about higher PSLE benchmark. Oh, okay. Thank you, Kezia. Thanks for your question. Actually, I got to know about this from Auntie Dawn, who shared with me about how homeschoolers have to score higher on their PSLE. So I didn't get a very satisfactory answer, to be honest, even though I asked about it in Parliament. Well, I did have some other kinds of conversations with some ministers. And well, let's just say that I hope to still get them to consider this particular issue with a different perspective. So I'm working on it. What is my opinion on that? Well, I understand how it doesn't seem to make a lot of sense that homeschoolers have to reach a higher standards. I think it stems from a desire or rather a worry. I think the government is worried that when you are not schooled in the formal academic environment, you may lack certain kinds of skills that being part of a bigger educational environment might offer, and so they hope that they can better prepare you for the future lapse of your life by ensuring that you are doing extremely well, at least academically. So, well, we're still having those conversations. Is something that needs to be discussed more at different levels. Yeah. So it might feel very unfair for you. I can imagine if you're being homeschooled, say, oh, why do I have to score higher than other people who are in school? My interpretation of that is that the government has some anxiety about whether homeschool students will be adequately prepared to integrate with society because they have such a different environment and exposure than the kids who go to school, right? So yeah, that's what it is at the moment. If you want to be a politician when you grow up, what are some tips you would give me as an 11-year-old? Wonderful. I would say talk to as many different kinds of people as you can, meaning different from you in terms of social network, background, skin color, perspectives, ages. Find opportunities to get involved in activities and maybe volunteering in a community where it gives you opportunities to talk to as many different kinds of people as possible. Because I think when you do that, then it really helps to grow your perspectives on things, and it usually also gives you the kind of so-called training that you need in terms of being able to communicate with different kinds of people and be able to consider their perspectives and all that. So at this age, perfect age to start. Okay. What are the difficulties of being a politician? I think I touched on that earlier. So if you have further questions to that, maybe you can add a more specific question. What sort of plants do my residents grow, Jonah? Wow, a lot of different kinds of plants. So in that picture you saw earlier, there was a huge melon. It's a donggua. So your if your dad or your mom cooks donggua tang melon soup with a giant melon, they grow moringa, which is a really really good plant that seems to grow very well in our soil. They grow vegetables like sweet potato leaves. They grow chilies. They sometimes they grow herbs that you use in your pasta, all sorts of things. So yeah, maybe if you would like to, I welcome you to come and take a look at some of our community gardens. There's a really, really amazing, beautiful one that is located at Block 813, Yishun Ring Road. Okay, it's located on top of a multi-story building. It's like a rooftop garden above this little cafe called Sasco Cafe. It's beautiful. It's got a lot of interesting plants there, and they have a little swing in there as well. I think it's a really lovely place for kids. So, Dawn, if you want to organize an outing for the Little U community to come and check out our gardens, just feel free to get in touch, and I'm sure our residents network volunteers will be very, very happy to host you guys. Okay, have I ever wanted to just scream at the resident? Not really. Well, I have felt sometimes in that moment quite frustrated. I have to say, feeling frustrated is not an uncommon occurrence. But well, because I'm a healing coach, I have a lot of skills and tools to help me regulate my emotions. So even when I'm feeling frustrated, I don't need to scream. I have other ways of dealing with my emotions and managing my emotions so that I don't hurt people by screaming at them. Okay, which is not good because if you scream at the resident, that's really bad as a politician. So maybe another way to tips to for Ivy earlier about what are some skills that would be good to start developing to be a politician is emotional awareness skills, emotional management skills, because when we can understand our emotions and we have the tools to manage our emotions, then we do not, then we are better equipped to not have ourselves negatively impacted by our emotions. So I'm very, very good at that. So no, I never wanted to scream at a resident. Sometimes I just feel quite sad that they are, if they are being so-called very difficult, it's probably because they have a lot of suffering in their hearts that they're not able to express or they don't feel understood. So I try to, as much as possible, understand what they might be feeling in their hearts. And usually they are feeling some kind of pain and hurt that's causing them to behave in a certain manner. And when my heart connects with their hearts that way, I don't feel like screaming at them at all. Sometimes I just want to give them a hug. Okay? So interesting. Both Ivy and Beverly asked me about whether I feel like screaming at No, because I know screaming doesn't help. Screaming just makes the situation worse. So if you're feeling very frustrated, it's good to maybe if you really feel like you it's very difficult for you, then you may want to excuse yourself from the situation and go somewhere where you can feel a bit calmer. And usually we have some volunteers around us to help with that, so they can, take over the conversation first while we go and, calm ourselves down, and then we come back to the conversation later. Right? So these are some things that we do encounter time to time. Roshanara, with so many battles to fight in a day as a politician in Singapore, what societal issue or problem would be your top pick to tackle or solve? Okay, there are so many, but I have actually identified a few that I'm focusing my energies on. One would be community care, which is about, because we have a lot of old people, we have an aging population. So for every 4 people in Singapore, there is going to be one elderly person, right? So this is something you can read out about aging society. So one of the things that I want to solve is about creating a community care network that can help families with the care of their elderly. So imagine if your parents have to be busy working, and then they're also looking after you, and then they have parents which are your grandparents, right? And they also need to take care of the grandparents. I think your daddies and mummies can feel very stressed, especially if they don't have enough help, or depending on whether they can find and hire a good domestic helper auntie to help. Some people don't have those resources. So how can we help everyone to take care of our old people better without feeling so stressed? Okay, so that is one problem that I am looking into and hopefully be able to solve. The other social issue would be about the pressure that Singaporeans feel like. Why do they feel like they have to compete, and then they have to be in a rat race, and it's so stressful, and people have mental health burnouts, right? I would like to be able to help Singaporeans and our government thinking and our society adjust to different ways of thinking about how we can have more happiness in our lives, right? While balancing our need to provide for our families and provide for the material needs in our lives. Another one would be about food security in Singapore. Because of climate change, because of things that are happening in other parts of the world, most of Singapore's food is imported by other countries, right? So, and then with the climate change issues, is impacting agriculture, etc. So I would like to help Singapore be more resilient in the way we access food in the future. So that's something that is also related to the community gardening efforts that I'm doing in Eastern South now. Okay, what would I say is a favorite part of my job? I think the favorite part of my job is just having the opportunity to be here in Eastern South, just being with my residents and having the opportunity to help them, feel better and have more ease in their lives by sometimes solving some of the day-to-day things and challenges they encounter. And I think being in a position where I can help to shape the way people interact with one another. So if you come to Nissan South, you will see that there are banners where sometimes I share about certain values that we would like to develop and grow as a community, such as being inclusive and kind to one another, such as being more mindful in the way we use things, so that we are not wasteful in terms of the way we consume things and throw away things. So I think my favorite part is that I have this opportunity to get everyone along to do the things that's going to help us become better human beings, have better relationships and better health, and being a better community together. Okay. Can teens write to their MPs if they want to do something in the community? Yes, definitely. Please write to your MPs if you have an idea or if you would like to run a project, right? Write to your MP and write to the people in the CC, because these are people who will know where are the resources and how they can help you with your project, right? So right now, we are also grassroots advisors to the community, and we are very encouraging of residents who would like to run activities or run projects, and we can provide some guidance, and maybe to some extent we can provide some resources so that you can, and venue, for example, suggest some venues for you to run your activity. So yes, definitely do that.